The primary claim deployed by Palestinian exponents to undermine Jewish identity is the scholastically debunked Khazar theory, which entails that the Khazars, a nomadic Turkic people group that was situated in the area between and to the north of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, converted to Judaism in the late 8th or early 9th century, and, following the fall of the Khazar Empire in the latter half of the 10th century, emigrated to Europe, where they established themselves as the ancestors or core of Ashkenazi European Jewry. As noted by Yehoshaphat Harkavi in his 1972 book, Arab Attitudes to Israel, this claim was then already being broadly peddled in the Arab world as an ideological weapon targeting the legitimacy of the State of Israel. And this is especially true among the Palestinians, where this claim has been given vociferous traction by the political leadership, including PA President Mahmoud Abbas, religious leaders, and the popular media. Right out of the gate, I would point out that despite its sloppy application by Palestinian exponents to all Israeli Jews, this claim has absolutely no bearing on the majority of them, who are descended not from Ashkenazi Jews, but from Mizrahi and Sephardi Jews, who have an established and well-documented history in the Middle East and Mediterranean basin, including the land of Israel, as discussed in the previous section. As for its application to Ashkenazi or European Jewry, the Khazar theory has been soundly disproven by the meticulous work of manifold scholars and scientists. The main reasons for its rejection may be summed up as follows. 1. The unreliability of the few sources that mention the Khazars' Jewishness. The primary sources that mention the Jewishness of the Khazars, whether just of the king and his court or the people as well, comprise 2 Hebrew documents and a handful of references in Muslim Arabic works, which were either contemporaneous with the Khazar Empire or composed soon after it was conquered by Sviatoslav of Rus around 970 CE. The 2 Hebrew documents, one a letter by the supposed king of the Khazars to the prominent Andalusian Jew Khazar ben Shaprut, and the other, an anonymous historical account of the Khazars' supposed conversion, contradict each other and have been rightly judged to be pseudepigraphal. As to the handful of contemporary Muslim references to the Khazars' Jewishness, these have all been shown to be based on rumor and hearsay. Ibn Rustah, in the early 10th century, one of these contemporary sources, admits that for his knowledge of distant places, he had to rely on sources and information transmitted by persons of questionable reliability. 2. The silence of most other sources regarding the Khazars' supposed conversion. The silence consists of several types. First, the silence on this topic when mentioning the Khazars by most other classical Muslim historians and geographers, including some of the most highly respected among them, such as Ibn Qutayba, al-Baladri, al-Tabari, Ibn Atham al-Kufi, Ibn al-Faqih, and others. Indeed, the only first-hand account of a visitor to the Khazar kingdom, namely that of Salam the Interpreter, who was sent by the Abbasid Caliph al-Wathiq in 842 CE to search for the mythical wall of Alexander, no mention at all is made of the Khazars' Jewishness. And al-Muqaddasi, who actually visited Itil, the former capital of the Khazar Empire, less than 15 years after its conquest, found many Muslims there, but no Jewish Khazars. Second, the silence of contemporary Jewish sources, in particular the Geonim, or heads, of the 2 yeshivot in Iraq. For 200 years, from 750 to 950 CE, during the heyday of the Khazar Empire, there is not one reference in the responsa literature of the 30 Geonim of Surah or the 35 Geonim of Pumbedita to a Jewish empire ruled or populated by Jewish Khazars. Even more, according to a note by Ibn Khawqal on a map in his Kitab Surat al-Ar, Khazar ben Shaprut eventually traveled to Khazaria, yet he said nothing to confirm that the Khazars or their king were Jewish. Third, the silence of Christian and other sources. The Byzantine state maintained important ties with the Khazars, yet no Byzantine work refers to their Jewishness, nor do any early Russian, Georgian, Armenian, Bulgarian, or Syriac writers do so, where one would reasonably expect to find such references. Fourth, the silence of archaeology. As summed up by Professor Shaul Stamper, quote, In addition to this broad textual silence, there is no material evidence for the conversion of the Khazars to Judaism, or even for the presence of a significant Jewish community in Khazar lands, unquote. 3. The absence of any onomastic, or more generally linguistic elements linking Ashkenazi Jewry to the Khazars. Neither the names nor the Yiddish language common to Ashkenazi Jewry exhibit any influence of Central Asian languages. Indeed, the fundamentally Germanic nature of Yiddish, spoken by Jewish communities in Europe and the interior of Russia, including places much further east than the former Khazar kingdom, bears out the veracity of the long-accepted scholarly view that Ashkenazi, or European Jewry, arose through migration up the Italian peninsula into the trading cities of the Rhine Valley, whence, after adopting the German stock of Yiddish, they eventually branched out into Europe and eastward into Russia. 4. Contemporary references to fundamentally non-Jewish practices among the supposedly Jewish Khazars. An example of one such reference is found in the earliest known systematic Jewish commentary on the Book of Esther, composed around 935 CE by Saadia ben Yosef, the Gaon, or head of the great yeshiva in Sura, Iraq, and one of the leading Jewish scholars of the medieval period. In order to corroborate the reality of Haman, a mere man, being portrayed in the Book of Esther, chapter 3, verse 2, as an object of worship, Saadia cites, from that part of the world, the example of the contemporary Khazars. And he writes that, quote, "Before the man of the best qualities among them, they do indeed prostrate themselves and worship him, and they call him by the name Hakan, notwithstanding that they set up another one in his place as time goes on," unquote. In other words, though the Hakan, which is the throne name of the Khazar king, is clearly mortal, he is worshipped as divine. Thus, about 150 years after their supposed conversion to Judaism, the Khazars are described by the foremost scholar of the closest large Jewish community to Khazariya as engaging in a fundamentally non-Jewish practice entailing one of the 3 gravest sins in Judaism. 5. The genetic evidence which closely links Ashkenazi Jewry to Mizrahi and Sephardi Jewry, and the lack of such linking them to the Khazars. Proponents of the Khazar view broadly cite as their scientific proof a paper published in 2012 by Aaron Al-Haik, in which he claimed a genetic link between the Khazars and East European Jewry. However, his study has been rejected by the majority of geneticists because of several severe methodological flaws, including his use of Caucasus Armenians and Georgians as DNA proxies for the long-gone Khazars, despite there being no proven link between these groups. By contrast, the work on Jewish genome history by other researchers, including some of the field's leading geneticists, such as Harry Oster, Michael Hammer, Gilad Smon, and Doron Behar, has consistently confirmed the conclusion that, as expressed by Doron Behar in a 2013 paper encompassing the work of an international team of 30 scientists, that, quote, Ashkenazi Jews share the greatest genetic ancestry with other Jewish populations, and there is no indication of a significant genetic contribution either from within or from north of the Caucasus region, unquote. 6. Jewish communities already existed in Europe before the fall and supposed dispersal of the Khazars. As discussed by my own doctoral mentor, the late Norman Golb, among many others, the Carolingian Empire, encompassing most of Western and Central Europe in the 9th century, had 3 main Jewish community seats, each for the so-called Rex Judaeorum, one in Mainz, or Mogontium as it was known, Rouen, or Roromagus, and Narbonne. From the early 10th century, we also have, from the Cairo-Geniza documents, correspondence between the Andalusian Jewish leader Hasdai ben Shaprut and the Kahilot Franza, communities of Franza, which latter term, at that time, denoted the lands of the Carolingian Empire. This is also discussed, among others, by Professor Norman Golb. Notwithstanding all that we have said above, even if there were some partial genetic link between the Khazars and Ashkenazi Jewry, this would not matter, since the borders of Jewish ethnicity have always been permeable to inclusion by means of conversion. This qualification of ethnicity, I would reiterate, is also affirmed by the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, which, as I previously noted, asserts that one of the defining characteristics of indigeneity is, quote, self-identification as indigenous peoples at the individual level and accepted by the community as their member, unquote. Hence, the theoretical infusion of Khazar DNA into the collective Jewish genome would have no more bearing on the issue of collective Jewish indigeneity to the land of Israel than the actual infusion of Arab DNA into the collective Egyptian genome has on the issue of collective Egyptian indigeneity to Egypt, which reasoning, incidentally, applies to the indigenous claims of many other ethnic groups conquered and colonized by Arab Muslims. No doubt recognizing the weakness of their claims against the historical continuity of Jewish identity and attendant indigeneity to the land, Palestinian exponents have also claimed descent from competing ancient indigenous groups. Mahmoud Abbas and others have at various points claimed that Palestinians descend from the Philistines, who are generally identified as an Aegean people, likely of Indo-European origin. They've also claimed descent at various points from the Canaanites, a Hamitic people group distinct from the Philistines. And some Palestinian exponents have even claimed that they are the true descendants of the ancient Israelites, which claim they complement by categorically applying the Khazar theory to contemporary Jews. However, insofar as the Palestinians identify as Arabs, these patently ridiculous claims contradict the universally affirmed classical Arab Muslim tradition that Arabs are descent from Abraham's son, Ishmael. Moreover, these claims contradict the ethnogeographic tradition of contemporary Palestinian Arabs as reflected in their nisab, gentilic surnames. For example, al-Masri means from Egypt, an especially common surname among Gazan Arabs. Al-Khawrani means from Khawran in Syria. Al-Halabi means from Aleppo. As-Surani means from Sur or Tyre in Lebanon. As-Saidawi means from Saida or Tzidon in Lebanon. Al-Trablusi means from Tripoli in Lebanon. Al-Hijazi means from the Hijaz in the Arabian Peninsula. Al-Karaki from Karak in Jordan. Al-Zarqawi from Zarqa in Jordan. Al-Iraqi from Iraq. Al-Fayoumi from the Fayoum in Egypt, and the list goes on.